George Corley Wallace, 50th, 53rd, and 56th governor, served 4 terms as governor. He was inaugurated for the first time on January 14, 1963. During the Wallace administrations, the greatest highway expansion in the state's history was accomplished. Improvements were made in health care, mental health, educational funding, unemployment compensation, old age pension, and law enforcement. The social impact of the Wallace years permeated all walks of life. George Corley Wallace was born to George C. and Moselle Smith Wallace at Clio, Alabama on August 25, 1919. He served in the U.S. Army Air Force in World War II. He was a member of the Alabama State House of Representatives, 1947 to 1953. He was a delegate to the Democratic National Convention from Alabama in 1948. He was a circuit judge from 1953 to 1958. He was governor of Alabama 1963 to 67, 1971, 75, 1975 to 79, 1983 to 1987. He was defeated in the Democratic primary in 1958, the only election he ever lost. He died in Montgomery, Alabama, September 13, 1998. Governor George Wallace is buried in the Greenwood Cemetery, Montgomery, Alabama. Global position, 32 degrees, 22 minutes, 20 seconds north. 86 degrees, 15 minutes, 40 seconds west.
I left it was during his term that I ran for Secretary of State.
So you didn't really work for George Wallace, and you became Secretary of State, is that right?
Oh, no, I worked for him for a year.
I see.
And Lillian and I ran at the same time. When she ran for governor, I was running for Secretary of State. Oh, yeah, I was George Wallace's right-hand man.
Do you remember anything specific about his administration? Any incidents or anything particularly funny that may have happened?
But I tell you, actually, there wasn't many cute things happened. George Wallace was in that thing up to his neck from the wood go. I used to do I did all the appointments of the boards, bureaus, and what have you, you know. When I'd mark my records, I'd write up all the paperwork and mark my records accordingly and put it in there for him to sign. Well, he never did send back out to me the mail. If it didn't go out, he'd let me know. When I learned anything about it, he had not signed any of them. He just wouldn't make appointments because he was afraid. You know what it is to make an appointment. You make one person, or maybe a half a dozen happy, and about 25 mad as fire. And so he was just slow to do that. And at one administration, I have forgotten how many appointments they said he'd let lay over. And they got in there and made them all right at the last. Because he just wouldn't, as he used to dictate his letter to me, that one of the worst things he had to deal with was making a choice between his friends. And that's the truth.
Friends, this is George Wallace, candidate for governor. At the present time, I am engaged in a speaking tour that is carrying me through the length and breadth of this state. I hope that you might be able to come out and hear me speak personally, but in case you do not, I have filmed some of the highlights of speeches that I have made in various sections of Alabama. I hope in these films to present to you my positive approach to the problems confronting the people of Alabama and some of my past experience in government. I hope that you will listen. My program, I believe, is one for the benefit of all the peoples of this state. Thank you very much. My friends, you have just listened and watched a film taken in several spots over the state of Alabama. As you can see, I make the same speech in North, South, Central, East, and West Alabama. I appreciate you having listened to and watched this film. I hope that you approve my stand on industrial development, my segregation stand, and the manner in which I hope to meet and cope with the problems confronting the people of this state, I hope that you will decide to support George Wallace in the governor's race. I do appreciate you having watched and listened to this film presentation. Thank you very much.
The young lady who always wins the popularity polls around Grinder's Switch, your friend and mine, the star of the Grand Ole Opry for such a long and wonderful time, Cousin Minnie Pearl. Come on back out here, Minnie Pearl. Where are you? She gets back there in politics, too, you know. In fact, down in Ozark, she was holding her long handles up with Wallace buttons. Here she comes now. Where is she? Come on, here she is. Cousin Minnie Pearl, another nice hand for her.
Thank you. Howdy. I'm still proud to be here. I found some kinfolks back there. Sure enough, fella had the same name I did. Awful handsome, too. I wish we was kissing kin, but I reckon that's asking too much. Y'all think all I think about's kissing. That's right. But I tell you, it's a lot of fun to be down here. I've been talking to more nice folks and seeing more nice people that I have somewhere back in the dark ages since I've been on the Grand Ole Opry. You know, I've been on the Grand Ole Opry for 18 years, come tater digging time. I have. I was just 3-year-old when I come up there. That's right, you don't believe that? Why, I'd be ashamed. Now, wait a minute. Let's don't talk about ages. Let me tell you something, though. I'm having a big time here with Judge Wallace and all of his fine folks. You know, up at Grinder's Switch, I don't know if I ever told you all this or not, but up at Grinder's Switch, well, my Uncle Nabob, I saw him run for several things. In fact, the last time I seen him, he was running for the edge of town. Had the whole town behind him. But no, I tell you, he run for office of constable last year, and so he's talking to Seif Jones. He said, Seif, I'd like mighty well for you to vote for me. And Seif says, why, listen to me. I wouldn't vote for you if you was St. Peter himself. Uncle Nabob says, well, if I was St. Peter, you couldn't vote for me because you wouldn't be in my district. But I've had an awful good time with Uncle Nabob. He's a sight in this world. I'll never forget one time I talking to Uncle Nabob about getting married. I said, Uncle Nabob, I don't believe my feller will ever marry me. Uncle Nabob says, well, now, I think you're doing all right like you are. He said, I'm going to tell you something about marriage. He said, marriage is a whole lot like getting into a hot tub of water. After you get used to it, it ain't so hot. You know, he was walking down the road the other day in Nashville. He had Aunt Ambrosie with him, and there's a pretty girl walked by, and Uncle Nabob kind of looked at her as she went by, and Aunt Ambrosie jerked him around, and she said, you old nut, you, what in the world do you mean looking at that pretty girl, and you old married man? Uncle Nabob says, well, now, just 'cause I'm on a diet don't mean I can't look at the menu.
Thank you, Bob, for your gracious introduction. Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. It's always a pleasure to be in Pike County because, as Bob told you in introducing me, I was born only 6 miles from the Pike County line, and truly, as far as I am concerned, I am a home county candidate as far as Pike County is concerned. I want to also tell you that my grandfather was born on Richland Creek. Dr. Wallace practiced medicine over in Barber County a good number of years before he died in 1948. My grandfather married a Pike County girl. My grandmother on my father's side was a McCatherine, and my grandfather's mother was a Fleming from Pike County. So truly I do have roots in this good county of Alabama. And when I was a young fellow at Clow, Alabama, I used to catch rides to Troy to go to the picture show. And when I passed through Troy or Brundage or Saco or Spring Hill or any other place in this county, I don't have to look at the railroad station to know what town I'm in, because I already know, because I've spent many hours and many days in Pike County, Alabama. And I want to thank you people of Pike County for turning out today. I also want to say briefly here that I appreciate the fact that the press of this state has seen fit to cover adequately all those who have entered the governor's race this year. I appreciate the fact that the large papers of Alabama are covering this speech here in Troy on this Saturday, March 1st. I want to tell you people a little about my background briefly. I was in the legislature for 6 years, and I was very interested, of course, in all the state functions, and I was interested in the great state college that's located here in Troy. And those who are connected with the state college here in Troy know that I was a friend of that institution and used to count on my help in advance in the Alabama legislature. And I'm still a friend of that great institution and the other institutions of Alabama. As I told you in talking briefly about my background, I was born in Clio, Alabama back in 1919. I'm nearly 39 years of age, and I'll be nearly 40 when the next governor goes in January 1959. I spent 6 years in the Alabama legislature after I came back from the armed services. And in 1952, the people of the 3rd Judicial Circuit elected me the judge of that circuit, which comprises the county of Barber, Bullock, and Dale. And so I want to say briefly, I'm going to make a brief speech today, that the people of Alabama are going to face many problems during the next ensuing 4 years. They're going to be social, educational, and political. And I'm going to try to apply all the ability at my command and the experience that I've had in government to help solve and meet some of the problems that will confront the peoples of this state in the coming 4 years. I want to tell you, as the campaign progresses, I shall spell out in detail how I stand on the various issues of the campaign. And in view of the fact that there are a great many issues in this campaign, and it would take me too long, of course, to expound on all of them, I'm going to briefly tell you of some of the things in my record as an Alabama legislator, and to tell you some of the approaches that I expect to make to the problems that are going to confront the people of this state. And I want to say this, that any man who runs for the governor of this state or runs for the governor of any state must stand on his record of public service. And I stand on my record of 6 years in the Alabama legislature and 6 years in the judicial branch of your state government. And I want to point out briefly today some of the things that I feel bears bringing to your attention. I'm interested in the conservation program, because the conservation of timber resources and of natural resources is one of the most important functions of state government. I am interested in health. I'm interested in the tuberculosis program, in the cancer program, and all the programs of public health. And I want to tell you that I have worked more hours in the field of public health, I believe, than any other candidate. I have been vice president and am today of the Alabama TB Association and led the fight, the legislative fight for adequate care for tuberculosis patients in 1955, which was the first time that Alabama saw full state care for those who suffer from the ravages of tuberculosis. And I point that out to you to let you know that as the governor of this state, I'm going to do all that I can to see that those who are afflicted and unfortunate with mental and physical disease are cared for to the extent of the state's ability and to the best way in which we can. And I want to say on that score of trying to help in the field of public health, that during the last amendment campaign, the Indigent Care Hospital Amendment, which is a systematic way by which we may provide care for those in the hospitals of Alabama who are unable to care for themselves, I am the only candidate for governor who publicly endorsed the Indigent Care Amendment, because I didn't slip over it, because I have been so vitally interested in hospital care for those in Alabama who have been unable to provide it for themselves. I want to talk, of course, on the matter of health more as time goes by. And I have worked all my 6 years to try to enhance and expand the facilities of the mental hospitals in Tuscaloosa and all of the other public health clinics and facilities in the great medical center there in Birmingham. Now, I want to tell you also briefly about the veterans of this state. We have many services to the veterans of Alabama, and I desire to see those services continued. And I want to say to the people of Alabama who are disabled, to those who were killed in World War I, II, or the Korean conflict, it was the Wallace Act that provides free college training and trade school training for the children of deceased veterans in this state. And therefore, to the veterans and to the disabled veterans of Alabama, I point to my record of service in that field, and I don't have to make you any outlandish promises on that matter, because my record shows that I am extremely interested in the problems of the disabled veterans of this state. In fact, in 1947, I happened to be voted the #1 champion of Alabama veterans in the Alabama legislature by the newspapers of this state. There's another matter that I want to speak briefly on, and I'm going to hurry on, and we're going to hear some more music by Minnie Pearl and these other fine musicians. The matter of local government. I believe in local government, and every man in the race for governor says he believes in local government. And I believe in the people of Pike County and the people of Troy handling their local government problems. And as I do not believe in centralizing all the power and authority in this nation in Washington and taking away the rights of the states and lodging them therein in Washington, I do not believe in the powers and duties of local government being taken from Pike County and from the city of Troy and lodged in the central government there in Montgomery, Alabama. Because I believe in local government, and if you're going to have local government, have it. And there's nothing bad about any local government when compared to centralized control. Because if anything is ever bad about local government in this country or this county or this state or this city, you can locate what's bad about it, and you can vote the people out that you want to vote out, but you put it up yonder in Montgomery, and you can't tell where the trouble is, and you can't find the trouble, and you won't ever find the trouble. So I want to tell you that I believe in local government, and I desire to see the counties and cities strong to provide the services that the people of the city of Troy and the county of Pike demand, and I will do nothing as the governor of this state to weaken or curtail the functions of local government, because today in this nation, the issue truly is whether local government shall prevail or centralized control will destroy the personal liberties of all of us.
Again, let me say that I appreciate very much all of you coming here, and I've traveled throughout the length and breadth of the state in the last few weeks, and you might say the last few years, and I'm very grateful for the fact that the peoples of this state and the peoples who are here tonight made it possible for me to run this race, because we were the runner-up in 1958, and by your hard work, we received, of course, over 250,000 votes. Now, I know there are a lot of people tonight, I hope a lot of people tonight here who did not support me in the last race, but let me tell you that this is a new race, and we don't care who you support in the last race, we're just glad you're going to support me in this race. Thank you very much. But we didn't get enough before, you know, and we got to have some new ones. And we want all of you to start on the front row with us in this campaign. So my remarks tonight, which will be the first remark in this campaign that I have here, I start off by saying that, all right, Lee. I start off by saying that Alabama and the South and the nation face evil times. The people of the South have faced evil times before, but through fortitude, sacrifice, and devotion to duty, they have overcome their enemies. It would be good in this day of trial to again reflect on the courage and devotion to duty of those who founded this republic and pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to its preservation, and to reflect upon those sons of the South who today are recognized throughout the world as the greatest patriots of all time. We not only have an evil antichrist, anti-God enemy of all of us in international communism, but we find our own American Constitution under attack from forces within. The people of the South are steeped in the tradition and liberty of conscience, political freedom, government of laws and not of men, with the government deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed, separation of powers of government and the rights of the states. Yes, free men and women under the Constitution. This form of government is under attack. Yes, under attack from an irresponsible Supreme Court and most of the lower federal courts in this land. There is today a judicial dictatorship and a judicial tyranny unlike anything the nation has ever seen. In 1821, Thomas Jefferson, a Southerner, said, quote, "It has long been my opinion, and I have never shrunk from its expression, that the germ of dissolution of our federal government is in the constitution of the federal judiciary, an irresponsible body, for impeachment is scarcely a scarecrow, working like gravity by night and by day, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless step like a thief over the field of jurisdiction until all shall be usurped from the states and the government of all be consolidated into one. To this I am opposed, because when all government, domestic, foreign, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as a center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided one government on another, and will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated, end the quote. We see today every day evidence of continual chipping away at the freedom of the people. The federal courts and their agents, the Justice Department and the Civil Rights Commission, are today taking over the local and state government functions of the South and of the nation. They are attempting to run the school systems, the businesses of the people, industry, labor, playground, parks, and even golf links. They write a new law at the drop of a hat for political reasons in order to please the NAACP and its cohorts. The federal courts are even attacking the jury system in this country, which is the most basic of civil rights that we ever knew. The people of Alabama love this state, and they pray for leadership in the next 4 years that will vigorously and intelligently resist the efforts of the federal courts, the Justice Department, and the Civil Rights Commission to destroy our social and educational order that would make every large city in Alabama meet the same fate the nation's capital has met, that of disintegration. The overwhelming majority of people in Alabama are God-fearing, and they want their leadership to meet the problems of the day in keeping with the traditions of compassion and helpfulness that has characterized the peoples of the South. Segregation of the races is in the interest of all Alabamians, white and black. Our resistance shall be in the forum of the courts and in posing of constitutional questions involving the sovereign of this state, your governor. Compared to the jungles of New York and other eastern states, we have no violence to speak of, even though we get headlines about a little scuffle. It is hardly noticed in New York when the police force is attacked every day by hoodlums. It is hardly noticed when the New York City Board of Education issues a notice it might have to draft teachers to teach in certain areas of New York. So you see, we are unalterably opposed to the ideas of politicians in these states when they cannot even control juvenile hoodlums in their own school system. I promise in no uncertain terms, as governor, that I shall oppose and stop the effort of anyone to commit violence on any person, whoever they might be, in regard to the segregation and integration question. This is no answer to any question. I believe in the existence of a true God who made us all. The handling of any matter with hate and malice runs contrary to the Word of God. The people of Alabama have a rich religious background. We shall meet the challenges of the times in this tradition. We pray for God's blessing to all humanity and to all the peoples of Alabama, whoever they might be. We pray that men of goodwill have their way, and not those who come to destroy the peace, because they will not prevail. They shall not prevail, for anyone who comes in the so-called Freedom Ride movement or any other similar movement will be escorted under the nearest jail. I'm going to let you folks tell them that. There is only one type of state government can meet the challenge of the times. State government that is honest and incorruptible. Incorruptible state government will give moral and spiritual strength to our resistance. There has been an erosion of integrity among many of the leaders of the country, as evidenced by the 5%ers, those who want to make an easy buck, the grafters and the chiselers who want a living without working. This erosion of integrity has reached the level of state government in many instances. The second most important man in state government is your finance director. He handles your tax money. I pledge to you that I will appoint an honest Christian businessman and not a politician experienced in legalized thievery as my finance director. For every dollar wasted on political payoffs in Alabama takes a dollar away from the old people, the school children, the blind and mentally ill, and causes the people to lose faith in state government, and this is the greatest curse of it all. I shall not use the office of governor to make me and my family or political cronies rich.
Thank you, Governor Sparks. Thank you, Governor Sparks. Governor Patterson, Governor Barnett, Governor Dixon, Governor Folsom, Lieutenant Governor Hardwick, Lieutenant Governor Ellis, Lieutenant Governor Enzer, Lieutenant Governor Boutwell, ladies and gentlemen, also members of the Alabama legislature and the Alabama judiciary. Members of the Alabama congressional delegation, members of the Alabama legislature, and distinguished guests and fellow Alabamians. Before I begin my talk with you, I want to ask you for a few minutes' patience while I say something that is on my heart. I want to thank those home folks of my county who gave an anxious country boy his first opportunity to serve in state politics. I shall always owe a lot to those who gave me that first opportunity to serve. I will never forget the warm support and close loyalty of the folks at Sutton's Store and Hegler's Mill, Eufaula, Beat 6 and Beat 14, Richards Crossroads and Gamage Beat, at Baker Hill and Beat 8, Coma, Spring Hill, Adams Chapel and Mount Andrew, White Oak, Baxter Station, Clayton, Louisville and Cunningham Place, Horns Crossroads, Texasville, and Blue Springs, where the vote was 304 Wallace and 1 for the opposition. And the dear little lady whom I heard had made that one vote against me by mistake because she couldn't see too well and she had pulled the wrong lever. Bless her heart. At Clio, my birthplace and where I finished high school, and Elamville, I shall never forget them, and may God bless those good people forever. And I shall forever remember that election day morning as I waited, and suddenly at 10 o'clock that morning the first return of a box was flashed over this state. It carried the message, Wallace 15, opposition 0. And it came from Hamrick Beat at Putman's Mountain, where live the great hill people of our state. May God bless the mountain man. His loyalty is unshakable. He'll do to walk down the road with. I hope you forgive me these few moments of remembering, but I wanted them and you to know that I shall never forget. I wish I could shake hands and thank all of you in the state who voted for me, and even those of you who did not, for I know you voted your honest convictions. And now we must stand together and move this great state of Alabama forward. I would be remiss this day if I did not thank my wonderful wife and fine family for their patience, support, and loyalty, and there is no man living who does not owe more to his mother than he can ever repay. And I want my mother to know that I realize my debt to her. This is the day of my inauguration as governor of the state of Alabama. And this day I feel a deep obligation to renew my pledges, my covenants with you, the people of this great state. General Robert E. Lee said that duty is the most sublime word in the English language, and I have come increasingly to realize what he meant. I shall do my duty to you, God helping, to every man, to every woman, yes, to every child of the industry. I shall fulfill my duty toward honesty and economy in our state government, so that no man shall have a part of his livelihood cheated, and no child shall have a bit of his future stolen away. I said to you that I would eliminate the liquor agents in this state, and that the money saved would be returned to our citizens. I am happy to report to you that I am now filling orders for several hundred one-way tickets, and stamped on them are these words, for liquor agents, destination out of Alabama. I'm happy to report to you that the big freewheeling cocktail party boys have gotten the word that their free whiskey and boat rides are over, that the farmer in the field, the worker in the factory, the businessman in his office, the housewife in her home have decided that the money can be better spent to help our children's education and our older citizens. And they have put a man in office to see that this should be done. And I can assure you that it will be done. And as I promised you in the campaign, no more liquor drinking in your governor's mansion. I shall fulfill my duty in working hard to bring industry into our state, not only by maintaining an honest, sober, and free enterprise climate of government in which industry can have confidence, but in going out and getting it so that our people can have industrial jobs in Alabama and provide a better life for their children. I shall not forget my duty to our senior citizens so that their lives can be lived in dignity and enrichment of the golden years, not to our sick, both mental and physical, and they will know we have not forsaken them. I want the farmer to know and to feel confident that in his state government he has a partner who will work toward helping him raise his income and increasing his markets. And I want the laboring man to know he has a friend who is sincerely striving to better his field of endeavor. I want to assure every child that this government is not afraid to invest in their future through education so that they will not be handicapped on the very threshold of their lives. Today, I have stood where once Jefferson Davis stood and took an oath to my people. It is very appropriate that from this cradle of the Confederacy, this very heart of the great Anglo-Saxon Southland, that today we sound the drum for freedom, as have our generation of forebears before us done time and again down through history. Let us rise to the call of freedom-loving blood that is in us and send our answer to the tyranny that clanks its chains upon the South. In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
That's worthy of his prominence. However, let me say that former Golden Gloves champion, B-29 flight engineer, legislator, judge, internationally known governor, and champion for states' rights in the tradition of John Calhoun and William Yancey is always welcome at Auburn University, even if he did attend the University of Alabama. It's with great personal pride that I introduce to you now His Excellency, the Honorable George C. Wallace, Governor of the state of Alabama. Well, thank you very much, Jim, members of the
student body and faculty, and Dr. Drone. It's a pleasure to be here at your great university today, be able to come home from where I've been visiting for the last few days. It's also a pleasure to be able to make a speech without having first to listen to the song We Shall Overcome. You know, it's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to serve as the chairman of the Board of Trustees of this fine institution. And you know that I'm all right because I tossed the coin right last year. So thank you very much for coming out here today. And I want to thank those officers and members of the Cadet Corps and all of you who have been so courteous and kind to me and to my party today, to tell you that this matter of traveling in other parts of the country is indeed physically and mentally exhausting. But the fact that you meet me here and shake my hand and say we stand with you is resting and stimulating, because it would be impossible to continue in the endeavor that I have started off on in the last few weeks if I did not have the moral and financial support and the prayers of the people of Alabama and of this section of the country. I spoke the other night at the University of Maryland, and we had nearly 10,000 students in the field house, and frankly, I'm glad to report to you that about three-quarters of them sounded as if they were students at Auburn University by the reception we got. And I thought you'd like to know that, because there are people... In fact, they had a lot of Confederate flags floating right in that audience at the University of Maryland. I also told them a joke the other night, and I heard it was on television, so if you've seen or heard it, forgive me. But I think that maybe you and I, from this section of the country, are going to teach those who are trying to pawn off some counterfeit movements upon us, sort of like the Northeast Alabama mountaineer treated some Washington counterfeiters who made some $18 bills by mistake. They looked so good and crisp and green that they said, what can we do with them? We don't want to throw them away. One of them said, well, I've been reading the Milwaukee Journal and the Baltimore Sun and the Washington Post and the Time magazine and the Life and the Saturday Evening Post, and if what they say is true about them, we can pass them off down in Alabama and they won't ever know the difference. So they brought the $18 bill south, and they saw an old grizzled Northeast Alabama mountaineer sitting by a little store. And one of these Washington counterfeiters said, here's a place to pass the first one. You can always tell a book by its cover. So they agreed, and they went into the little store, and one of them said, Captain, can you give us change for an $18 bill? And the old southern Northeast Alabama mountaineer said to the Washington counterfeiter, I sure can. Do you want 3 6s or 2 9s? One of these days, and I think in the not-too-distant future, as a result of the efforts of people in your section of the country and yourselves, we may start passing off some 6s and 9s for some of this $18 bogus stuff that they're trying to pass off in our country today. I want to tell you that we have had splendid reception in other parts of the country. The other night in South Milwaukee, during that campaign, we had a political rally on the south side of Milwaukee, in which there lives the great Polish-American and Serbian-American community. And we had the largest crowd, they said, that had appeared at any rally, and they had a Serbian band. And while I was standing in the wings waiting to be introduced by a man named Branko Gruber, the first time that I'd met the gentleman, I heard him from the audience say, play some Southern songs. And they played Way Down Upon the Swanee River, and they applauded. Then someone said, play Dixie. And they played Dixie, and they stood and sung it in Polish. And I tell you, it sounds mighty good in Polish.
I guess the reason that happened is everything I have on is charged. Tonight, I don't know if you feel as I do, but I think we are very much honored, and it's a privilege for us to have our speaker here. He's a long way from home, but most important, I think, is the fact that he will bring to us the other side of the question. Now, he's probably prejudiced, as sometimes he may claim us to be, because I hear from my editor friends in the South, I have a particular close one in Mississippi, about how we Northerners just don't see things right, and everything we put in our papers is all one-sided. Well, we Northerners at times tend to think those Southern people are all one-sided. So it is a privilege for all of us to hear the other side of this question, and believe me, it's an important question, I think, and becoming more important every day. Governor Wallace is a native of Alabama, and he came from Clayton. He has a long, distinguished record of public service. He was Assistant Attorney General, he was in the state legislature, and he was a circuit judge. Now, he hasn't always been successful. In 1958, he was beaten in his race for governor. He ran second. But in 1962, he had the largest vote and the largest majority of any governor ever elected in Alabama. Now, that was not in the election, of course. That was in the primary of the Democratic Party. I understand the Republicans, there are a few down there, and they're talking about open season. They're getting a little too many, as I understand, for you, friends. Since this time, he's not only been running an efficient state in Alabama, and incidentally, he's running a little bit of competition to our own Jim Rhodes in getting new industries for his state. And part of the reason he's up here now is that he is getting contacts with interested industries to put plants in Alabama. If they're branch plants from Ohio, this is fine. Just so they're not Ohio plants moving to Alabama. He's been on several speaking tours. First he went up through the Ivy League circuit, and this time he's in Cincinnati, here in Columbus, goes to Cleveland, Chicago, Monday's up in Minnesota, then he goes home. Again, I think it's a privilege for us to have this man with us. And I would say there's one thing that a friend of mine that runs a paper at Rolling Fork, Mississippi, told me one time they had an election in Mississippi. You know, I don't know about Alabama, but in Mississippi they have the poll tax. Not only do they have the poll tax, but you have to qualify to vote, as you do in Ohio, for that matter. But anyway, they didn't want the colored people to vote there too much, but they thought they would be fair. So this fellow, very good fellow, they came in and he wanted to register to vote. And they said, well, if that's all right, but we have a little test now you have to do down here. Can you recite the Declaration of Independence? Yes, sir, I sure can. And he stood up and right from the beginning to the end, not missing a word or comma. Well, that's very interesting, and but there's one other little test we have. It says, how about the Gettysburg Gazettes? Yes, sir, I sure can. And he went right through for fourscore and 7 years. Square, you can't beat me. He did a little better than I did. Well, he said, that's fine. Didn't make a mistake. He said, we have one more test, though, before we can certify you for voting. He says, we got to have you read. So you show that we can read, that you can read. And he reached on the counter and he brought the election official and gave this colored fellow a newspaper. Now, it happened to be a Chinese newspaper. So he looks at it this way, and then he looks at it this way, and he goes a complete circle. And the election official says, well, what does it say? And he said, boss, he says, I can't tell too much about that small print, Those headlines say the colored folks ain't voting in Mississippi this year. Please introduce Governor George Wallace of Alabama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Sigma Delta Chi, brethren, I should say, sistren. I am an honorary member of your fraternity, and I appreciate you having invited me to come and be with you on this trip here to the great state of Ohio. And we have enjoyed our trip to your state. I've been here before, and as I said down in Cincinnati, I've even worked in your state. Back as a high school boy and a college boy, we sold magazines, working our way through college on the Ohio River, and we used to come across into your state even in those days. So I'm glad to be here. And even though I'm from the South, I've found that being a Southerner is not necessarily geographical anymore. It's those who possess certain philosophies and attitudes, and I'm happy to say that we have found many people of Southern attitude all the way from here to Seattle and over to New Hampshire. So, as you said tonight, Mr. Chairman, to talk about the other side of the matter, of course, you people in the field of news media, yourself, I'm sure, are familiar with the so-called Civil Rights Bill. I'm sure that every one of you have a copy of it. I'm sure that every one of you probably have written about it and read it. In fact, really, how many of you have read the Civil Rights Bill? Well, I wasn't trying to embarrass anybody. Really, I thought you had probably read it, being in the newspaper business. But this bill is a bill that is one of the most far-reaching bills ever sponsored in the American Congress. One of our fellow congressmen, fellow politicians, I should say, from over in Kentucky, Frank Sheff, signed this bill at the request of the president. He said he hadn't read the bill. And after he read the bill the other day, he took his name off of it because he said it was the worst piece of legislation that had ever been introduced in the American Congress. This man, of course, was very truthful about it, and he withdrew his name. But before I talk a little about this piece of legislation that so vitally affects all the business activity, all the housing, all the schools of your state, I would like to tell you a little bit about some of the things that are happening in our state, because you have received a distorted view of things in our part of the country, and we have been maligned, and we have had things said about us that are not true. You take, for instance, the recent Birmingham matter that made the headlines in the paper, your papers, and every other paper in the country, was of course overplayed. We had 45 days of demonstrations in our state. And in those 45 days of demonstrations, only 69 people were injured. 69. And 22 of these were Negro citizens. Not a single one seriously injured, because had they been so, pictures would have been on the front page of Time and Life and Look and every other magazine of that ilk. Probably been on the front page of the Saturday Evening Post. That is before Wally Butts and Paul Bear Brown. On the day that the demonstration was had in Washington, the March on Washington, organized by one Bayard Rustin, many dogs were behind the Lincoln Memorial in case they needed them, in case something happened there. That's a matter of public record. Only 22 people injured in 45 days of demonstrations. Headlines every day. Well, of course, if Thanksgiving was a year ago, there was a riot, a race riot. And we haven't had any race riots in Alabama. And all of this time, a race riot, of course, is where Negro and white citizens fight one another. This hasn't happened, and I thank God for it. And I've commended the great overwhelming majority of Negro and white citizens of our state for the fact that they've been very calm and restrained for all the provocation that we've had, and the agitators that have come to our state. Agitators that many of you people in the press laugh at when we say are communist inspired. In fact, the whole demonstrations organized in my state was organized by 16 either members of the Communist Party or members of Communist Front organizations. We have their pictures, we have their records, we have everything about them, we have what they said. The Bradens from Kentucky over here stood in the pulpits of Negro churches in Birmingham and organized demonstrations in a pulpit. And of course they don't believe even in the existence of a God because they are, Carl Braden is a communist, has been so identified. Those are the type people, the Holt, Dombrowski, Miles Horton. Those are the people who came to Alabama and organized the demonstrations there. Only 1/2 of 1% of the Negro citizens of Alabama were involved in and whose standards of morality are just as high as those of any other state. And I think that responsibility of the press is to not distort things. The other day, of course, you had more trouble in Cleveland, Ohio. You had more violence in Cleveland, Ohio. In your attempted integration, or whatever you call it, racial imbalance business up there, than we've had in all of the integration, forced integration that has taken place in Alabama. We haven't had a single melee in front of a single school. In Birmingham, Alabama, there was a little pushing and shoving at one school, but you had more in Cleveland, Ohio. But had that been in Alabama, they'd still be writing about it. They, of course, alerted thousands of troops, as you saw the other day, because Notasulga, Alabama, and because of Shorter, Alabama. Thousands of troops. Shorter, Alabama is about 450 people. And, that is, Notasulga, Shorter is a little under 200. And of course, all these thousands of troops poised toward the enemy, Notasulga and Shorter. Not a single thing happened. And yet, of course, Castro, he can cut off the water in Cuba, you know, and instead of poison troops, why they all run under a rock like a bed lice. So we folks in Alabama, we feel that we ought not to be treated as the enemy of this country because we aren't. And we think that the press, the most irresponsible reporting of the press, and we have local members of the press from newspapers who did not support me for governor, and their newspapers at this moment do not think too much of me at all, even though...
No, you got the gun salute. George, if you would place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, George Corley Wallace.
I, George Corley Wallace.
Solemnly swear.
Solemnly swear.
That I will support.
That I will support.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Alabama.
And the Constitution of the State of Alabama.
So long as I continue.
So long as I continue.
A citizen thereof.
A citizen thereof.
And that I will faithfully.
That I will faithfully.
And honestly.
And honestly.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Of the office.
Of the office.
Upon which I.
Upon which I.
Am about to enter.
Am about to enter.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
choir will now sing the state song. Sing Wallace.
Well, thank you very much, Tom Ventris. I want to say to you fellow Alabamians, to Governor Wallace and Ms. Wallace, to Senator and Ms. Allen and the members of the Congress, our constitutional officers, and the members of our new legislature, that I am filled with most normal and human of emotions as I speak with you here today. And I appreciate so very much your coming here in this inclement, cool weather. And I will make my remarks as short as possible in view of that fact, because I know that it is very cold here today. I have pride. I am proud that you would honor me by granting me the opportunity of serving you as your governor, and especially so since this marks the third occasion that you have permitted me this rare privilege. A landmark, of course, in the history of our state government. Humility, humble that you would so honor me, and at the same time keenly aware and deeply stricken with the duties and responsibilities that are placed on me today. Duties and responsibilities to all of you, my fellow Alabamians, regardless of who you happen to be, who have labored so long, so hard, and with so much perseverance and determination to make this great state that which it is. It is you to whom I am responsible, and it is for you and for you alone that I must and will perform the duties of this high office. Gratitude, yes, I am grateful that you would grant me this unique opportunity for service. Grateful to all of those who have supported us in our labors throughout the years, and to all Alabamians who join with us in the task that lie ahead. So let me tell you my pride and humility at the same time, also express my gratitude for having made this moment possible. I would be less than human if I did not reflect upon that cold January day in 1963, when at this same place I first accepted the leadership of the executive branch of the government. And beyond that, back to my early home in Clough and Clayton and Barbie County, my origin, and to the many fine men and women of that time and place who, out of generosity and understanding, did so much to enable a young boy just turning into manhood to prepare himself in such a manner and fashion that he could later offer himself to his people for a role of leadership. To all of them, some now departed, I offer my special thanks. We're running a little off schedule, a little ahead of schedule, so I hope you understand that. I don't think so. That was some jets, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't see them flying over, and I appreciate, but the ceiling is a little low. But our hopes are high. And looking forward from that self-same January day, let us take stock of what has taken place in our great state and the lives and fortune of her people in recent past. Admittedly, many things have changed. Our citizens have been subjected to many and trying and difficult experiences. But as is usually the case, adversity has made us a more dedicated and unified people. We find in our state today a determination on the part of all of our people, black and white, rich and poor, young and old, to work untiringly and in unison for the betterment of Alabama. This, to me, is one of the great advances of this period in our